Now, Danny, having traveled all over the country, now I should tell the audience that you have your own plane and you go out and you get an idea and you pursue it and you explore it to its fullest. Is the situation at Long Island downtown's in, is it the same all over, or are we dealing with kind of a unique problem here?
We're very fortunate to have someone like Gary to grab the reins, if you will, at a time before Belmore got in a lot of trouble.
Right.
I've been through towns that are ghost towns. It's traditionally a joke to say, oh, you go out west, you'll find ghost towns, and I found a couple of those, but I also found a place in the state of Washington called Leavenworth, which sounds like a prison.
Right.
But they took it and they made it look like the Swiss Alps. Everyone is dressed in the proper attire that is like the Swiss Alps, and they've created a theme, if you will. And I know that Gary's putting together a theme too for the Belmonts.
Right. Now, Fred, you do a lot of walking in your role as, I guess I could say, as a politician, as a government official. You've walked an awful lot in Nassau, and people tell you what their beefs are. And I'm sure they talk a lot about taxes. I'm sure they talk about government costs. But do you feel that people feel a sense of connectedness to their downtowns?
Yes and no. You know, communities vary. I don't think we can stereotype every community, because traditionally the first downtowns were really where the railroads were, I suppose, after you had little groups at the crossroads, as Danny explained it. So on the South Shore of Long Island, which I'm more familiar with, you've got traditionally the downtowns, quote unquote. Some of the later areas that grew up, like a Jericho or some of those communities, I'm not sure where the downtown there would be. To answer your question, I don't know I think people identify on the South Shore with their local community. Again, though, I emphasize we take things for granted. My big concern is that all of a sudden they take that, for example, where they can go for meats or specialty items. If it's not there, it'll affect their property values. If it's blighted and vacant, there will be a loss of a sense of unity, because it is a place that they think of as the center of town, usually where the library is and other institutions as well.
Danny, you want to add?
Ani, just last week at Valley Stream was the last of what we call the TNT nights. And we bring together a real sense of community. We put rides on the street, we put cars, new cars on the street, and we open up the community, and we had about 5,000 people show up for that event.
Now, it brings up an interesting point, is how do you get everyone to work together? I've been to a lot of downtowns across Long Island, Greenport recently, for instance, where the Rotary Club has put up town directories, you know, in little boxes, and tells you where their main points are, like the town carousel and certain, you know, restaurants, but all the merchants are also listed. Now, how do you get people to work on the same page? And I guess nationally, how are people doing it?
Well, a lot of the chambers of commerce have to be run almost like a business.
Okay.
And what you're talking about is a great deal of persistence on the part of the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Greenport. And Gary's done the same thing. You go after it, and you go after it, and you go after it. And you keep explaining, and you keep telling them how to do it. And the mom and pops do need a lot of education, because it's not the same as it was.
Right.
Many of the owners of the small town businesses, some of them are operating in the past the way it used to be, when there weren't the extent of competition that there is now. So they did business the old way, and sometimes it takes some new education to say, look, you can't do business the way it used to be. You now have other competition that you never had to deal with before, and so for that reason, not only do you need to be re-educated, but your employees need to be re-educated to give that personal service, to know the customer's name, not to say, well, if it isn't out there, we don't have it, but to say, if it's not out there, let me get it for you. That's the type of service that the downtowns need to grow into.
But don't you run into a problem, and I guess I'll throw this question open to all three of you, where someone says, what are you telling me about my business? I mean, there's sort of a resistance. I'm the local pharmacy. I kind of know how to be a pharmacist. Why is the jeweler down the street kind of telling me how I should do things? I mean, isn't there at least the kind of resistance that, I mean, everybody has an ego and I know what I'm doing?
You get a small amount of resistance, but I think that based upon your track record, in Belmore, for example, we have the largest family street festival in the county. It's coming up the end of September, September 28th and 29th, I might add. Thought I'd get that plug in. We bring in 100,000 people into the Belmore area for those few days. It gives the local businesses a shot in the arm. The local businesses looking and say, wow, the chamber must know what it's doing. It's brought this amount of people in. Now if we come up with another suggestion, they say, well, they've got a track record. Are you always going to get one or two people that are going to resist because they know best? Yes. And unfortunately, many times, those people do not continue in business because they haven't learned to change.
All right. Now, Danny, in your book, which I've been very fortunate in reading an advance copy of, you talked about some failures as well. Flint, Michigan with Auto World, and tell us a little bit about that and where they went wrong, and maybe it's a case of listening to the wrong people.
That's exactly it. It's very important to listen, and listen, and listen, and listen, and then go find out. Ask the people what should be going on. Particularly Auto World was a major failure, and there was a lot of money invested in that.
Right.
But it was important to go out and look at the successful side of things, the stuff that's just sitting there, the ghost towns, and the stuff that was a total flop.
It's interesting. As I listen to Danny and Gary speaking, I can be a little objective. You need vision. The Bible says where there is no vision, the people perish. And I mean, I have a local business in Wanter, and I'm active in the chamber in Wanter as well. I'm on the image committee. And what we've learned from Gary and from Danny is that there are always a few people who see beyond the narrow today. A lot of people, you're right, do just worry about surviving tomorrow. They say, oh, it's not going to make any difference in my store, they're not going to help. But if you have successes, as these Dan in Valley Stream and Gary in Belmore, other communities as well as their own people then see that there's something being accomplished. Many of our local chambers, I speak around the county, are actively after images. They try image committees. They're trying to put flowers, floral displays. They're trying to spruce up the local downtowns, because what's in this case, what is good for business is good for the community. Because if you show life downtown, then you've got vibrancy, you've got people that'll shop there, you have more interaction amongst people in the community, and that's a healthy thing, because then you've got a healthy downtown, you've got a healthy community, and people growing together.